Hey, howdy, hello, and welcome to the show. Welcome to this episode of the Steam Redlight series, the series where we look at Steam's most lowly and controversially rated games to see if they're really as bad as the internet says they are. I'm your host for the day, Smirk. Today's game is called Blacksmith of the Sand Kingdom, which was released on January 6th of 2021 and is priced as a $20 game. This is one of those games where when I found it, it was mixed, but by the time I edited this video, it had successfully made its way into mostly positive. Will it stay there? Who knows, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. When I found this game, it had 14 reviews in total, with 9 positive reviews and 5 negative reviews, dragging it down to 64% positivity. In Blacksmith of the Sand Kingdom, which has already lost points with me for being the first game to make me expand my spreadsheet columns with its 30-character count name, you play as a young man named Volker, if you choose not to name him something else, that is. Volker's father, a well-revered blacksmith, has recently died in battle, and it's up to his son to take over the family business while also maintaining his desire to become an adventurer. Alongside him is his childhood friend, and this is definitely not Makona Fairy. In addition, there are several townsfolk around the city of Muspelheim who will provide advice and services to Volker on his journey. In Blacksmith of the Sand Kingdom, you'll find an RPG with a well-balanced combination of shop management and turn-based combat. When you get started, you'll pick from one of the 5 starter classes, beginning with a fighter, archer, mage, priest, or thief. During your introduction to the game, you'll also create 4 faceless, silent characters and choose their names, roles, and etc., as the game requires you to have 5 party members to begin your adventure. To complement the turn-based strategy elements, you'll have the ability to unlock and select formations, or faiths, that offer both your teammates additional stats and effect bonuses. The game works in what I'd consider 3 phases that I'll summarize. First, there's the town phase. In the town phase, you're able to shop and sell materials and enhancements, visit the infirmary to heal you and your party, take up quests at the local adventure hall that progress the story or train up your skills, eat a meal at the local tavern for experience, and eventually you'll be able to visit the arena where you can fight an arrangement of mobs for crafting materials 5 times a day. This time is mostly composed of small errands that help you in the next 2 phases, and these visits will occasionally lead to short interactions with NPCs in charge of these points of interest. Secondly, there's the dungeon crawling element, which you can only take advantage of once a day. In the dungeon, you go through a couple of different fields on a map looking for resource nodes, treasure chests, and/or mobs. Mobs take the form of Grimace, the old co-conspirator of Ronald McDonald's old street gang, and once you all touch butts, you'll see who was really behind the mask. You can choose to avoid most mobs while resource gathering, and if they're defeated or escaped from, they'll respawn after a few moments. For nodes, you get a random assortment of earthly materials such as cotton that you definitely mine from that rock, and these don't respawn until the next day. Finally, there's treasure chests around the map which contain items. The treasure chests do not respawn at all. Have you ever played a game where you beat a horse? And I don't mean some demonic nightmarish horse, just a regular horse. Well, in this game, you can beat some nice looking horses. And last but not least, there's the shopkeeping element. After you're done retrieving crafting materials from all those different sources, you can craft items for sale or use by your party. In addition, you can upgrade your equipment with runes that add stats or effects. Over time, your crafting capabilities will expand through books you purchase at the store, or once you've used a piece of equipment or crafted a certain amount of times, you'll progress in your blacksmithing tree. Once you add items for sale, set their prices, and then open up shop, your day ends for you to repeat to the next. I think that covers the basic stuff, so let's move on to what I liked about being a blacksmith in this Sand Kingdom. The thing that I liked most about my time in this game was the core gameplay loop. To summarize it up, you take care of some errands in town, go out to the dungeon to collect materials and complete quests, then return to the village to craft and sell the fruits of your labor. This gameplay loop is the fuel that drives progression and feels fulfilling. Your growth as a blacksmith is easy to measure, and your impact as a combatant, or even a non-combatant in some class trees, is felt immediately. The core gameplay loop even manages to dodge that overly grindy feeling, mostly because of some quality of life effects that the developer has implemented. The quality of life effects are another thing that I greatly enjoy. The game features an auto-battling mechanic with some different AI modes to try and best execute your desired combat strategy at a pretty high level. You also can increase the combat speed so you can speed through certain combat encounters of your choosing, because your time is definitely better spent elsewhere in the game than strategizing against trash mobs. The game also makes a large effort to not be inconvenient. For example, there are some quest markers on mobs that otherwise would have been unidentifiable to complete a quest, or showing the quantity necessary to craft for an open quest in the crafting menu, or even letting you know in the quest selection menu when you already have the items necessary to complete a quest. While this isn't all of the quality of life effects I've experienced, these are just some of my favorites that I thought were helpful multiple times throughout the experience. Another thing that I enjoyed is the combat class system. At the beginning, you're introduced to 5 base classes. As you progress through the game, you're able to assign a subclass to you or your party members, which gives you access to that class's skills to help carve out a specific responsibility in the party, both for passive and active skills. Each class has a pretty expansive selection of skills that serve in combat and resource gathering purposes, and I found the skill offerings to be exorbitant. If you're afraid of committing to a class out of fear of making the wrong choice, then this leads us into my final goodening point. The game makes a great amount of effort to not finalize much. You'll find that just about everything in this game is changeable. You can change classes anytime you can access the Adventurers Guild for free, and if you invest high-impact enhancements, called orbs, into low-level gear, you can just transfer those orbs into new gear. Has one of your units disappointed you beyond belief? Just rename them and pretend they're a new addition to your party. The game successfully supports experimentation without high levels of investment, and as long as you have the steady income source from your blacksmithing endeavors, you'll have all the money you need to try out each class's combined dynamics. Now that I've talked about the better parts of this new career decision, let's talk about the more ungood portions. To start with a smaller item, one of the minorly frustrating pieces was the keyboard layout and how you use that to navigate around the menu. Eventually I did catch on, but there's a lot of questionable keys you have to get used to that I've never had to experience in another game. I tried it on both the PS4 controller and the keyboard and found the latter the lesser of the two evils. The confirm and back buttons are mostly just strange in both places, and in some certain spots, the next page or next tab buttons are easily forgettable. Since this game has no in-app keybind reconfiguration, you're just going to have to get used to it. The last thing that was undermining the experience is that the story is almost non-existent. You get small and slight advancements every so often, but it's so slow to advance that I'm not so sure there's anything heroic or interesting about Volker's quest at all. There's very little overall world lore that I've experienced in the first 6 hours of gameplay, and for the characters that you do interact with and get information from, you're drip-fed content at such a deadening pace you may forget the last sliver of a backstory by the next time you're given anything. That's about everything I can be critical of, so let's move on to the verdict of this newfound career path. To highlight Blacksmith of the Sand Kingdom's strengths, my most enjoyable part of the game is that the gameplay loop is rewarding and not at all cumbersome with the grind. This is partly due to the quality of life implementations backing it up and is its secondary strength. Next up, I find the depth and variety of the class system to be fun to experiment with. And finally, the game does its best to support your experimentative efforts by not locking you into class decisions or equipment enhancements at any level. To cover the Blacksmith of the Sand Kingdom's weaknesses, I find the keyboard and controller layout to be uncanny. I've never experienced a layout like this before, and it takes some getting used to since you can't reassign any of the keys in the game. For the greater of the two evils, I found that the story is drawn out over a long period of time, and any type of world lore seems to be mostly absent. With these things considered, I can say that I do recommend Blacksmith of the Sand Kingdom. I actually had a lot of fun with this game. Its faults hardly touched its accomplishments, and I look forward to putting more time into this game in the future. If you're curious as to why people were critical of this game when I first found it, there is a game-breaking bug that I didn't experience in addition to some people being critical of this genre of game having free or cheaper alternatives elsewhere, which I don't consider while doing my reviews. I typically only look at the game that's in front of me and whether or not I enjoyed it absent of other alternatives, but everyone has their own criteria. That's about all I've got to say for this game. Don't forget to do the things like the video, comment your thoughts on the game or the review, follow the social media links in the description below, and subscribe if you couldn't shirk the smirk. If you're feeling generous, hit the bell. Maybe I'll see you next week.
Well, just as well. They told me I was daft for even asking.
Ew.
Oh, the other armorers.
Is it because I'm not waifu enough?